The Chittagong Hill Tracts is an important but often overlooked region in the history of Bangladesh. Its role in the nation's past is frequently overshadowed by the more populated and commercially significant regions to its west. However, these elevated plateaus have been crucially connected to the identity of the Bengali people and the emergence of Bangladesh itself for most of its history. This area has been inhabited by indigenous tribal groups that were largely untouched until the 18th century, when the British Empire began encroaching into the region. While the British presence significantly altered the social and economic landscape, the Chittagong Hill Tracts have continued to play a vital role throughout modern Bangladeshi history. We will begin by looking at how this mountainous region became a critical part of the Bengal presidency. During the height of the British Raj, then we will examine how the unique culture and geography of the Chittagong Hill Tracts fueled a desire for autonomy after independence from the Dutch, and how this has manifested in the modern day. Before British colonization, the Chittagong Hill Tracts was home to a number of different tribes speaking various Austro-Asiatic languages. These included the Chakma Marma, Marong, Kumi, Lushai, and more. They lived in small villages and were primarily subsistence farmers. Their way of life was largely unchanged for centuries. The region was known for its dense forests and difficult terrain, making it less attractive to outsiders. In the 18th century, the British began to exert control over the Gangetic Plain, the most fertile and populous part of what is today Bangladesh. To the east, they encountered the tribal communities of the Chittagong Hill Tracts. The British initially had limited interest in annexing these lands due to its challenging geography, rugged terrain, thick jungle, and lack of easy transportation routes. Instead, they established a kind of buffer zone along the edge of their growing colonial domain. The mid-19th century, the British Raj officially recognized the Chittagong Hill Tracts as a separate district within the Bengal presidency. Despite being separated physically, culturally, and geographically, the Hill Tracts were still very much under British colonial rule, along with the rest of Bengal. At this time, the British began to implement policies aimed at greater integration between the Chittagong Hill Tracts and the lowlands. These efforts were driven by both economic and political considerations. Economically, the British wanted to exploit the natural resources of the region, including its timber, minerals, and fertile lands. Politically, they saw the Hill Tracts as a potential buffer zone against the Burmese and other external threats. One of the key instruments of control the British used in the Chittagong Hill Tracts was the introduction of a new legal system. The British judges and administrators did not understand the local languages or customs. So when cases came before them, they often relied on the testimony of local informants, many of whom were not literate. This resulted in a legal system that was biased towards the ethnic groups that had more contact with the British. The indigenous peoples of the Chittagong Hill Tracts were largely excluded from positions of power and decision-making. They were also subjected to forced labor and other forms of exploitation. For example, the British built a railway line through the region and used the labor of the local people to construct it. Many of them were paid very little or nothing at all for their work. Despite these challenges, some leaders from the Chittagong Hill Tracts did emerge to resist British rule. One such leader was Yadu, member of the Chakma tribe, who led a rebellion against the British in the late 19th century. However, these acts of resistance were not enough to stop the British from tightening their grip on the region. By the early 20th century, the Chittagong Hill Tracts had become fully integrated into the colonial economy. Large-scale agriculture, mining and logging operations were established, and the indigenous peoples were either displaced or forced into low-paying jobs. But the end of British rule did not bring an end to the problems faced by the indigenous peoples of the Chittagong Hill Tracts. After Bangladesh gained independence in 1947, the new government did not recognize the unique cultural and historical circumstances of the region. Instead, they treated the Chittagong Hill Tracts as just another part of the country. As a result, the indigenous peoples were not given the same rights and protections as other citizens. For example, they were not allowed to practice their religions freely or to speak their native languages in public. In addition, the Bangladeshi government did not invest in education and healthcare in the region. This created a cycle of poverty and inequality that continues to this day. The situation began to change in the 1970s, and the Bangladeshi government started to pay more attention to the needs of the Chittagong Hill Tracts. This was due in part to the work of activists and intellectuals who raised awareness of the region's problems. But despite these efforts, the indigenous peoples of the Chittagong Hill Tracts continue to face significant challenges. One major issue is land rights. Over the past few decades, the Bangladeshi government has leased large tracts of land in the Chittagong Hill Tracts to private companies for the purpose of commercial agriculture. This has resulted in the displacement of many indigenous people who have been forced to leave their homes to make way for large-scale farming of cash crops like tea, coffee, and rubber. In addition, the indigenous peoples are often not able to access basic services, such as healthcare and education. This is due to a lack of infrastructure in the region, as well as discrimination by government officials. These issues came to a head in 2012, when a group of indigenous people protested the construction of a mega dam in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. The proposed dam would have flooded large areas of the region and displaced thousands of people, while the dam was ultimately not built. The protests highlighted the deep-rooted tensions between the indigenous people of the Chittagong Hill Tracts and the Bangladeshi government. Despite these challenges, there is hope for the future. In recent years, the Bangladeshi government has taken some steps to address the concerns of the indigenous people. For example, in 2018, the government passed a law that recognizes the land rights of the indigenous people. Additionally, there have been efforts to promote education and healthcare in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. However, these measures are only a start, and much more needs to be done to ensure that the indigenous people of the Chittagong Hill Tracts have the same rights and opportunities as other Bangladeshi citizens. Geographically, the Chittagong Hill Tracts lies along the eastern edge of the country and covers an area of approximately 13,000 square kilometers. It is situated on the eastern edge of the Bengal Basin and is bordered by Myanmar to the east. The region is characterized by its rugged terrain and dense forests. The highest peak in the Chittagong Hill Tracts is 1,235 meters tall. The capital city of the Chittagong Hill Tracts is called Bandarban. Other important cities include Kagrachari and Rangamati. The climate in the Chittagong Hill Tracts is tropical and humid, with an average temperature of 27 degrees Celsius. The region receives an average of 2,000 millimeters of rainfall per year. The main rivers in the Chittagong Hill Tracts include the Sangu, the Matranga, and the Karnafuli. These rivers are important for both the ecology and the economy of the region. The Chittagong Hill Tracts is home to a variety of wildlife, including elephants, tigers, leopards, and monkeys. The region is also home to a variety of plant life, including teak, bamboo, and rubber trees. Economically, the Chittagong Hill Tracts is a relatively poor region. The main industries in the region are agriculture and forestry. The majority of the population of the Chittagong Hill Tracts is employed in agriculture, with the main crops being rice, maize, and sugarcane. The region also has a significant amount of mineral resources, including limestone, marble, and gas. However, these resources are not being fully utilized due to a lack of infrastructure and investment. Culturally, the Chittagong Hill Tracts is a diverse region. The region is home to a variety of indigenous people, including the Shakma, Marma, Marong, and Kumi. These indigenous people have their own unique languages, customs, and traditions. The Chittagong Hill Tracts is also home to a variety of religious groups. The majority of the population is Buddhist, followed by Christianity and Islam. The Chittagong Hill Tracts is also home to a variety of festivals and holidays. For example, the Chakma people celebrate a festival called Sangrai, which is a celebration of the harvest season. The Chittagong Hill Tracts is an important part of Bangladesh's history and identity. From its early days as a remote and neglected region to its role in the independence movement, the Chittagong Hill Tracts has played an important role in shaping the nation. Its unique geography and demographics have also made it a fascinating case study for understanding the complexities of colonial rule and post-colonial identity. As Bangladesh continues to grapple with issues of inequality and social justice, the Chittagong Hill Tracts will continue to be an important part of the national conversation. Thank you for watching.